Throughout this series, we may often use the term missional. But what exactly is it to be missional? Or what is meant if we were to say, are you missional? David Bosch, a South African missionary, defines mission in this way. Mission is more than and different from recruitment to our brand of religion. It is the alerting of people to the universal reign of God through Christ. So Michael Frost, the author of Surprise the World, more succinctly defines missional as all that we do and say that alerts others to the reign of God. You see, mission is not primarily concerned with church growth. Mission is first concerned with the reign and the rule of God's kingdom on earth. Now, a growing church is an outcome of mission, but it is not the primary objective. So we might say, well, then why would we be missional? Well, the word mission itself comes from two root words, literally meaning sent out. So it makes sense why we use the term missionary. That literally means sent ones or ones who are sent to far off places to proclaim the gospel. So what if we were all called to be sent ones? Maybe not to far off places, but to the places we already find ourselves each and every day. The local city in which God has already located us. What if mission, to be sent out, was not always a destination, but a posture that we learn to adopt? You see, we are missional when we become sent ones into our schools, our neighborhoods, our streets and workplaces, and we begin to alert people about the kingdom of God, the rule and the reign of God on earth, right here, right now. We become people of mission or missional people because this is how our leader himself was. We follow our leader, Jesus, and Jesus came to earth to alert us to the reign of God, literally to usher in God's kingdom. Think about how much of Jesus' teachings center around explaining the kingdom of God. The kingdom is like a pearl of great price, or a mustard seed, or yeast in dough, or a farmer sowing seed. Think about the Beatitudes, which remind us who the kingdom is for, or the Sermon on the Mount, which orients us to kingdom life and practices. And actually, at the point of the biblical story in which we find ourselves today, we are awaiting the consummation of his kingdom, or waiting for the fullness of his kingdom to become realized. So much of Jesus' message was about alerting us to the reign and the kingdom of God. But what was the method of God's mission? It was to reveal himself in a person, Jesus of Nazareth. We call this infleshing of God the incarnation. This is the theological event that we celebrate each and every Christmas. We say that Jesus is Emmanuel, which literally means God with us. In other words, God did come to us. I love the way that the Message version translates John's description of the incarnation at the beginning of his gospel. Look at these words from John chapter 1 and verse 14. They say, "The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. We saw the glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous inside and out, true from start to finish." Plainly put, God knew we couldn't make it to him, so he came to us. He met us on our turf, in our weaknesses, and steeped in our reality. The missional method of God is not so much attractional as it is incarnational. You see, attractional says, come and see, but incarnational says, I'll go and show. Perhaps there is a place for both of these aspects in our individual lives and in the way our church functions. Certainly there is value in having effective ministries and a relevant community in which we can invite people to become a part. However, attractional should not be the only way in which we exist. Why? Well, again, because this isn't how our leader existed. It wasn't his method of alerting us to the reign and rule of God. He didn't just wait around creating slick marketing tools, hoping people would be attracted to come and hear. Now, undoubtedly, people were attracted, sometimes creating crowd control issues in Jesus' ministry. But they were drawn because Jesus had already come to them. He would meet people where they were, sometimes in very personal and intimate ways. Like when he sat with a Samaritan woman who was drawing water at the hottest part of the day from her local well. Or when he visited with a Pharisee seeking truth who wanted to inquire from Jesus' teaching, but under the cloak of darkness. Or when he met a demon-possessed man in a graveyard, or ordinary fishermen in their boats casting their nets. When he met rural or city folk, Jew and Gentile alike, Jesus was always on the move. He was incarnational. He went and met people where they were. So is it any wonder that this is the missional method Jesus calls us to follow him in as his body now on earth? So how do we take this abstract theology of an incarnational God and make it practical? How do we apply it to our lives today, right here, right now? Well, over the next 5 weeks, we will learn 5 habits that help us become missional like Jesus. They are habits that will naturally propel us into the world. We will become more incarnational as we implement these practices. So here is an overview of the habits that we will discuss. It's easy to remember them because they are patterned after an acronym of the word BELLS. So here they are. On week 1, we'll start with the B and we'll talk about blessing, being a people who regularly, intentionally bless others. Then we'll move to the E, eat, learning to be a people who eat often with others. That should be a fun one. Then L, learn Christ. The other L, listen to the Spirit. And finally the S, which is to be sent, to see ourselves as sent ones. Now we will look at each of these habits one at a time over the next 5 weeks and dig into what each of them looks like. But it might be worth noting the overall goal of building these habits into our lives. You see, when each of them are implemented into our daily routines and weekly patterns, they will produce a quality in us. When I become a person who intentionally blesses others, I become an increasingly generous person. Similarly, when I become a person who regularly eats with others, I become an increasingly overweight person. Just kidding. I become an increasingly hospitable person. When I learn Christ, well, I become more Christ-like. When I intentionally am listening to the Spirit, I become more Spirit-led. And finally, when I see myself as a sent one, when I view my life through the lens of being literally a missionary, I actually become a more missional person. In other words, when these habits become regular rhythms in my life, I become known as a generous, hospitable, Christ-like, Spirit-led missionary. Now, take a moment and imagine with me, what if we were known individually and collectively in this way? We would become a world-changing, culture-shaping movement of people. And over 2,000 years ago, Jesus came to us. He became incarnational and surprised the world by leading a questionable life, a life that evoked curiosity from those who were around him, who listened to him, who watched him. So how can we once again become known as a people who surprise the world, who surprise our neighbors, our co-workers, our classmates, and our fellow citizens right here in Northeast Oklahoma?